Mouse.
Please do not be alarmed by anything you see or hear around you. You are bound to feel some initial ill effects as you've been rescued from certain death at an improbability level of 2 to the power of 267,709 to 1 against, possibly much higher. We are now cruising at a level of 2 to the power of 25,000 to 1 against and falling, and we will be restoring normality as soon as we are sure what is normal anyway. Thank you.
WDRN production staff may be considered complete works of fiction. Any similarity to reality is only due to the conventional grasp of perspective vortex. Please adjust your perspective, vortex, translator devices for enjoyable listening pleasure. WDRN can take no responsibility for improperly adjusted perspective vortex translations and currently operating at the frequency of somatic 900 megahertz.
Hey y'all, Fusing the agenda here. If you're an independent journalist struggling to get your story out, contact one of our mediators in our chat room for review. Get your story featured on the Hawk Ethernet Radio, part of the Wicked Development Radio Network. Flash submission guidelines. Video or portion must not be longer than 3 minutes. Only be played with a startup point of 3 minutes. All material submitted to WDRN is the sole responsibility of the submitter. All content is fair use practice. With your help, WDRN will rise to the top of all available news networks. This has been Defusing the Agenda.
Mouse.
All right. I wish Citizen Z would be a little bit more honest about his stuff about me and stuff. He just simply hasn't been. And, well, that's what it is. But nonetheless, I really love that intro. It's a mixture of what I have done and what he has done. And that music in the background, it just makes you move. Thank you for tuning in. If I am scared about this, you should be absolutely out of your freaking mind. And it's not something light. Okay, first of all, we had COVID. Where'd it come from? Okay, and then we had, well, the lockdowns. Where did that come from? All financed by who? And who finances who? Yeah, WHO. And then, during all of this spatter in San Francisco, I think it was, that they had found a biolab that is sponsored by, nonetheless, China. It's actually sponsored and manufactured by China. Well, the thing of it is, what are they doing with a biolab in America to begin with, in some private warehouse? It's not like they're inventing vitamins, for the benefit of all mankind. That's not what's going on here. Look, this has happened again. And I guarantee you, you go to Chicago, you go to Milwaukee, you go to St. Louis, you go any of these major towns, we're going to find one of these. We're going to find one of these, and it's going to be held responsible for the distribution of viruses. Listen.
Good afternoon. I'm Sheriff Kevin McMahill with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. With me today is the Special Agent in charge of the Las Vegas FBI Field Office, Christopher Delzato, and the Clark County Fire Chief, Billy Samuels. You'll hear from all three of us. I want to provide a more detailed update and walk you through how this investigation unfolded. Just a little over a week ago, LVMPD received limited information indicating that laboratory equipment and potentially hazardous materials were being stored at a residence in the northeast part of our town. As our investigation progressed, we determined that the home was owned by the same individual connected to a prior illegal biolab investigation in Reedley, California that occurred in 2023. The nature of that earlier investigation raised significant concern for what we might encounter in this new case. In Reedley, investigators reportedly discovered an illegal biolab containing materials possibly associated with a range of infectious diseases, including hepatitis, COVID, HIV, malaria, and other potentially dangerous pathogens. While it is unknown whether similar materials were present here at the Las Vegas residence, the possibility required us to proceed with extreme caution. Because of these concerns, LVMPD's counterterrorism section and our Armor Task Force, in partnership with the FBI, immediately initiated a joint investigation and began developing detailed operational plans to address this potential threat. Out of an abundance of caution, extensive preparations were made, resources were mobilized from across Clark County, the city of Las Vegas, as well as our other state and federal partners, to include some from outside of our region, to ensure that this operation could be conducted safely. The main suspect in this case, who you're going to see a photograph on the screen next to me here in just a second, is the owner of the house on Sugar Springs Drive. He's already in federal custody on charges related to the investigation of the biolab in Reedley, California in 2023. I'm sorry. So that's not the main suspect. This is the main suspect in the California case. The primary suspect we arrested, however, is Mr. Ari Solomon. He's 55 years old, and his initial charge was a charge of disposing and discharging hazardous waste. Solomon is believed to be the property manager for both houses on Sugar Springs and Temple View. As previously briefed, the first phase of this operation began early Saturday morning. You're going to start to see a number of images from this as I talk. At approximately 5:51, our LVMPD SWAT team served a search warrant at the residence on Sugar Springs Drive. There were 3 individuals inside of that home. Each had independently rented a room from the property owner. They were safely removed from the residence, and at this time, they are not involved in this investigation. Based on the information we received, investigators believe that the locked garage was the primary location of the potential biological and hazardous materials. The search warrant was authored by LVMPD's counterterrorism section, and our multi-agency teams began preparing to deploy to the scene. To safely manage the risk, a layered use of technology, as you see here to my left, was employed throughout this operation. LVMPD police drones were deployed from the onset, providing a real-time aerial and situational awareness as SWAT secured the residence. Drone feeds were monitored remotely, allowing commanders to assess conditions, adjust tactics, and limit officer exposure in real time. We also employed our robot dog. Before we entered the room, the tactical robot was deployed to clear the interior and conduct initial air sampling. The robot can open doors, navigate stairs, and transmit video in real time, allowing officers to assess the conditions before entering a dangerous environment. Once this residence was cleared, LVMPD's Armor team entered the scene. Armor, for those of you that don't know, is our all-hazard regional multi-agency operations and response unit. They do all of the gamut of the CBRNE.
As you can tell,
Wearing protective equipment, including respirators, the team drilled a small access point into the interior door leading to the garage and inserted a probe to assess air quality. A pinhole camera was also deployed, transmitting live video to the command post and to our Fusion Watch Operations Center here at headquarters. Almost immediately, investigators observed multiple refrigerators, a freezer, and other laboratory-type equipment, along with numerous bottles and jugs containing unknown liquid substances. These items, importantly, were consistent in appearance to the items found and described in the Reedley, California lab investigation. After initial assessments were completed, the Armor team escorted FBI scientists and specialized evidence collection team into the garage. Investigators observed one refrigerator that was still opening and wrapped in the household plastic wrap, along with the freezer that was plugged in and running. You'll see some of that in that video. When the refrigerator and freezer were opened, our investigators identified a significant volume of material, including various vials and storage containers with liquids of different colors and composition.
and if you notice, they're all in, well, actually, it's a little bit beyond MOP 4. Some of them were in MOP 4, some of them were in actual hazmat suits, which is a little bit higher than MOP 4. But regardless of all this extra protection, even our people that are in biosuits.
Investigators revealing new information regarding the biolab that was discovered in northeast Las Vegas over the weekend. Here's what we know tonight. The property manager of a northeast Las Vegas home raided by Metro Police faces federal charges connected to a suspected illegal biological laboratory. The Metro released some new video of the investigation tonight, and police identified the man as 55-year-old Ori Solomon. Investigators say they found multiple refrigerators, a freezer, and other laboratory equipment, along with numerous bottles and jugs containing unknown liquid substances. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us live at 6. I'm Latoya Silman. Metro Police say they learned that laboratory equipment and possible hazardous materials were being stored in that home. According to Metro, the home in southern Nevada was owned by the same man connected to a prior illegal biolab investigation in Reedley, California from 2023. We talked with a resident over the weekend following the initial investigation in Las Vegas.
This was never seen anything like it before, ever in my life. Been in Las Vegas since 1987. I've seen accidents, fires. What I do for a profession as a living, I've seen lots of different things. This was crazy. There's probably 80 or 90 vehicles out here within a quarter mile.
80 or 90 vehicles with more than one person per vehicle, most likely. So we have about 100 people, let's say, that visited this location. And you notice how careful they were in order to show you all the biohazard stuff? Well, didn't work out for them.
Our 8 News Now investigators breaking yet more news about that biolab that was raided over the weekend. Documents we obtained reveal several people got sick from it. 8 News Now investigator David Charnes breaking that story. And David, what are you learning about it tonight?
Well, these new documents say several people became sick from that suspected lab inside a house that police and the FBI are labeling as an Airbnb or a short-term rental. Metro showing this video of the inside of that lab, inside that Northeast Valley's home garage. We've learned a person tipped off the FBI in early January that that garage was locked and that there were fridges running inside. A person telling those investigators that it smelled like a hospital with a, quote, foul, stale, stagnant air smell. Now, documents say several days after entering that garage, 2 people became, quote, deathly ill. They said they couldn't get out of bed, and several other people had gotten sick there before. Also learning items from this lab were moved from a different location here in the valley, possibly from several years ago when that location failed to get a state license. Now, as we first reported over the weekend, this lab is connected to a lab the feds actually raided 3 years ago in 2023. That location there in Reedley, California, outside Fresno. Inside, officials found similar equipment and pathogens like HIV and malaria. Court documents in that case mention Las Vegas and possible warehouses here. And today, I asked the city manager for that community about her reaction to this latest lab. What was your reaction when you saw over the weekend that all these same people were involved in yet another potential biolab, but this time in Las Vegas?
I will say that I was not surprised. I mean, I have sympathy for Vegas, and I feel very bad for that community that they had to endure what they endured over the weekend. But we were not surprised when we heard about it way back in 2023 when this case hit. Through simple search docs, Google, etc., we found multiple connections to Las Vegas, and a congressional investigation that was done on our case, which is public, showed some ties to warehouses in Vegas.
So now the question is why this lab existed if it may have been on the radar or someone's radar 3 years ago. The 8 News Now investigators first to report how Metro arrested this man, 55-year-old Ori Solomon, the property manager of that home, learning today he runs multiple short-term rentals. Prosecutors say he's here on a non-immigrant visa. He can't own any guns, but documents say during that raid on Saturday, officers seized rifles and handguns from him. They say he's been in contact with the man in federal custody connected to the raid in California and whose business owns this Northeast Valley home. Solomon appeared in federal court this afternoon. He's going to remain in custody for at least a couple more days until his next hearing. And in that hearing, we could hear more charges filed against him as Metro and the FBI are awaiting those results to find out exactly.
No, we're not waiting for any results. The biggest problem is, remember what he just said? He owns multiple Airbnbs. And this was an Airbnb he was running in order to make some money while he stored these dangerous things at his place. So when it's time, he can go there, just turn the refrigerators off, open the door, and contaminate the entire neighborhood. But, get this. Now, this is not broadcast very much, but I did hear it through police officials that they had located 3 gun houses in Denver. whereas they had over 200 guns in each one of these houses. They had improvised explosives. Everything was already assembled, ready to go in order to cause a war. And again, these houses were Chinese sponsored. So when we're looking at immigration, especially military-aged Chinese people that are mandated to go in the military when they get out of high school, they go in the military for X amount of time and then they get out. Or if they choose, they can actually continue their, military experience. But the thing of it is, if they're military age, that means they're in the military with a passport as a civilian to come to America as a spy to set up these labs and these gun houses. That's what this is coming down to. And I got news for you. It ain't over yet. This has been going on since before COVID. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had COVID, now would we have?
Ever since COVID, a bigger spotlight has been shown on the Chinese Communist Party's biowarfare program. And regardless of whether the COVID virus itself was an aspect of that program or not, let's completely set that aside for the interest of today's episode. The fact remains that the Chinese Communist Party does have a very large and very viable biowarfare program in place, of which the Wuhan Virology Lab was just a small component. And one of the most shocking things that they're developing is a biological weapon that can target and attack the DNA strands specific to certain racial groups, which obviously, for one, sounds extremely conspiratorial, and secondly, just sounds like something out of a science fiction movie. Or perhaps what's most shocking about it is the fact that it's true. The Chinese Communist Party is indeed developing these weapons that can target specific race and ethnicity markers within the human genome. And this is not even something new. This has been going on for a while. For instance, 21 years ago, back in the year 2005, a then colonel in the Chinese PLA, the People's Liberation Army, he wrote an article that was widely read that, quote, looked at military uses of proteomics, which are transgenic technologies used to vastly enrich the military's ability to defend and attack. Colonel Guo elaborated that biotechnology affords, or soon will afford, militaries with the ability to design agents that attack only key enemies without harming ordinary people. Injuries might be limited to a specific gene sequence or a specific protein structure. Now, back then, it was probably theoretical, but as technology has gotten more and more advanced, this threat has become more and more real. For instance, in 2017, you had a retired Chinese National Defense University president. He made the argument that, quote, modern biotechnology is gradually showing strong signs characteristic of an offensive capability, including the possibility that specific ethnic genetic attacks could be employed. That very same year, by the way, 2017, which was 9 years ago, the People's Liberation Army, they added a new section on biology as a domain of warfare to their National Defense University textbook. And in that section, there's a subsection where they highlight specific ethnic genetic attacks as a potential future vector capability. And interestingly, that very same textbook in 2020, the 2020 edition of that same textbook, it emphasizes even more the growing importance of biotechnology on the battlefield. It reads the following. Quote, the biological field has become a brand new territory for the expansion of national security. For example, the use of new biological weapons, bioterrorism attacks, large-scale epidemic infections, specific ethnic genetic attacks, and purposeful genetic modification of the ecological environment, food and industrial products, and the use of environmental factors such as population migration, climate change, and natural disaster. That is literally who's of conspiracy theories written in the PLA military textbook. Now, all of this might make it a lot more clear as to why the CCP has been able to stitch together the largest collection of American DNA profiles anywhere in the world, even larger than what the US has been able to collect. And the CCP has done this, by the way, not only through good old-fashioned hacking, but also through more traditional channels, such as purchasing the data from DNA sequencing companies. But sometimes the CCP does not even have to purchase this data. As an example of what I mean by that, this right here is BGI. They are one of the largest manufacturers of prenatal tests used around the world. And wouldn't you know it, this company, BGI, they've been sharing the genetic data of pregnant women from 52 different countries with the Chinese military. And at this point, you might be wondering, Two questions. First of all, what use does the Chinese military have with all this data? And second of all, what would be the explanation, the benign explanation for sharing? Well, the answer to that second question is actually rather simple. It has to do with a concept called precision medicine. All right, just a pause here for a super quick snack break brought to you by today's sponsor, Masa Chips. Probably the healthiest chips on the market. They're made with exactly 3 ingredients: organic blue corn, 100% grass-fed beef tallow, and sea salt. You really don't get much better than this. I mean, long-term viewers of the show, you probably know that prior to the 90s, almost all fries and chips in this country were made with beef tallow. But then after the 90s, in order to save costs, almost every single manufacturer switched to using seed oils. But you know the problem with seed oils, all those studies showing their links to inflammation and metabolic diseases. So you kind of want to get them out of your diet. But then what are you going to do? You're going to move into some cave out in the mountains? Or you just get Masa chips. You put them in your cupboard. That way when you, your wife, or your kids, they want a snack, you just grab one of these. They're so good. They are crunchy. They don't break when you dip them into guac. And the best part is because they're made with beef tallow, they actually are satiating. So when you eat them, you don't feel like you're hungry afterwards, like 10 minutes later. There's no bloating feeling. There's no crash. There's no feeling of regret afterwards. You just eat them, you feel great, and then you go about your day. And the best part is that to our viewers, to the viewers of Facts Matter, Masa is offering a great promotional sale. Just head on over to masachips.com/Roman. And if you use promo code Roman, you can save 25% off your first order. And so again, masachips.com/Roman. Use promo code Roman for 25% off. And check them out. They sponsor the show. They care about getting the truth out there. And they care about your health, which is why they don't compromise in the ingredients. So check them out. And now let's head back to the episode. And the positives of precision medicine are rather obvious. If you go to a doctor and that doctor has information about your genetic makeup, then they can tailor their treatment perfectly to your individual specific body. As an example of what precision medicine looks like in practice, in the year 2004, scientists at the University of Wisconsin, they injected what they called naked DNA directly into the veins of a lab rat for easy access into muscle cells. Here was an excerpt from their research paper. Quote, "In the experiments, the scientists did not use viruses to carry genes inside cells. Instead, they used naked DNA. Naked DNA poses fewer immune issues because, unlike viruses, it does not contain a protein coat, hence the term naked, which means it cannot move freely from cell to cell and integrate into the chromosome. As a result, naked DNA does not cause antibody responses or genetic reactions that can render the procedure harmful. The injections yielded substantial, stable levels of gene activity throughout the leg muscles in healthy animals with minimal side effects." The lead scientist noted that, quote, "We detected gene expression in all leg muscle groups, and the DNA stayed in muscle cells indefinitely." Now, whatever your thoughts are on gene therapy, at the very least, these Wisconsin-based scientists do appear to be doing their research for benign purposes, to be able to tailor specific strands of DNA for specific individuals. However, listen to what the colonel within the People's Liberation Army, listen to him describe his thoughts on this particular gene therapy breakthrough, which took place at the University of Wisconsin. Quote, "University of Wisconsin scientists have made exogenous naked DNA and injected it into veins for easy access into muscle cells for gene therapy. By combining this knowledge and particle gun technology, we could create a microbullet out of a 1 micrometer tungsten or gold ion on whose surface plasmid DNA or naked DNA could be precipitated and deliver the bullet via a gunpowder explosion, electron transmission, or high-pressured gas to penetrate the body's surface. We could then release DNA molecules to integrate with the host cells through blood circulation and cause disease or injury by controlling genes." Now that is rather on the nose. But it's also not theoretical because, for one, as a part of China's previous 5-year plan regarding precision medicine, they made a specific point to mention that while at the same time they're collecting the world's DNA, no one should be allowed to collect the Chinese people's DNA. Here's specifically what they wrote under a subsection called Regulations of the People's Republic of China on the Management of Human Genetic Resources. Quote, "National security focus includes special limitations on foreign access. Foreign organizations, individuals, and their institutions established or actually controlled shall not collect or preserve human genetic resources in China within the territory of our country and may not provide human genetic resources of our country abroad." Meaning that while they can collect the world's DNA, including Americans' DNA, no one in the organization is allowed to touch the DNA of Chinese people. Furthermore, the Chinese state has dumped a massive amount of money into these precision medicine programs to the tune of roughly $9 billion. You compare that to America's precision medicine initiative, which saw only $215 million worth of initial investment, meaning, in a practical sense, China has pumped in roughly 43 times more money into these programs than the U.S. And those numbers, by the way, are from a few years ago. Maybe there's a lot more money going into these programs now, but those numbers are also only what's publicly known about. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And China is not like a normal country with a clear separation of the private sector and the government and the military. Instead, the reality is, if it's in China, it ultimately belongs to the Chinese Communist Party. And so keeping that in mind, let's take another quick look at what that colonel in the People's Liberation Army said about the future of weapons that the PLA is developing. Quote, "Humaneness in the conduct of war has become the focus of attention recently, and weapons of mass destruction are banned to reduce casualties. The times call for new kinds of weapons, and modern biotechnology can contribute such weapons. In the near future, when military biotechnology is highly developed, modern biotechnology will have a revolutionary influence on the organization of military power with its more direct effects on the main entity of war, human beings. Modern biotechnology offers an enormous potential military advantage." A quick shout out to our new coffee sponsor, Hunter's Blend Coffee. It's a great brand run by patriots. The coffee is great. It's fresh. They actually source their beans from the top 6% of Q-graded beans. And then they roast and package it right here in the U.S. and ship it directly to your doorstep in vacuum sealed packages, super fresh. So check them out. The link will be down there in the description box below. They support the show. Let's support them right back. Now, the other day when I was hosting my other program, Primetime, I got a chance to speak with Joshua Phillip on exactly this topic. For your reference, he's a senior investigative journalist with the Epoch Times who's been looking into these PLA programs for well over a decade. And here's what he had to say.
You know, one of the big things, because people say, well, don't companies here do it too? The big problem you have with the Chinese Communist Party is its data laws. So unlike in the United States where Facebook scoops up everything and Twitter or whatever, X I guess now, scoops up everything, and you know, your medical company scoops up, which they don't as much. They're moving towards it. Scoops up everything. You know, it's in private companies. The federal government can't necessarily access that. Even if they do, they can't necessarily legally share it between different departments. Even with Trump trying to get data on, like, you know, illegal immigrants across different departments, it's very hard because they get legally challenged on it. In China, it's not like that. Everything is centralized. China's data laws require that every single piece of data, whether you're foreign or domestic, if a Chinese search engine company buys data from an American company, which they sell it to them, right? Your social media company is probably selling your data to a Chinese company. And when they get it, the CCP gets access to it. All of it is centralized. All of it is searchable, and all of it is being used to create bioweapons. It's being used to do profiles on you, like the social credit system, which they're actually building internationally right now through the Belt and Road Initiative as part of their infrastructure programs.
No,
they are.
On.
They are.
They cannot be diverting resources to building profiles on people overseas.
They absolutely
Random people.
I reported this back in probably like 2012-ish.
With AI, it's pretty
I
easy
guess, but
now.
what's the point of like John, you know, the Smith?
John the
I don't know. I was thinking, or just, yeah, okay, John the blacksmith over in Portland, Oregon. Like,
we still have blacksmiths.
No, they do it. They do it because this. I mean, it's not hard to do when you're dealing with, of course, AI.
Yeah.
The more data, the better. And the fact is, when you buy this data from those companies, that's what advertisers are doing already.
But not DNA data. That's the surprising part.
No, that's how they categorize it. Because what use is that when they stole data from OPM, right, Office of Personnel Management, on the entire federal government databases, including the "What did you do wrong in your life" test, where they go for your security clearances. All that was stolen by the CCP. When they were breaching and stealing through Chinese hackers all the American medical data, why do you think they were doing that? It's because they're building databases on Americans.
So speaking of breaching,
and they also, as part of the Chinese social credit system, they want to find out who Chinese are talking to and have relations to outside of China. It's not even just Americans. They want data on everybody.
That's wild. So speaking of breaching, what about these Chinese artificial wombs?
Well, first, though, on the DNA point, like why this is in the news a bunch is because earlier in April of this year, the affordable at-home DNA testing company 23andMe filed for bankruptcy. And the reason it's like causing concern is it has over more than 15 million people's genomic data from over 50 countries. And so Beijing has a history of coming in when companies are filing for bankruptcy and being like, great, I will get it at a profit. And so you have a couple different people raising concerns about this. One of them is Craig Singleton. He's from the Foundation for Defense on Democracies. And he's citing, previous speeches by Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping talking about stuff like this. So Xi himself has described biotechnology as the next critical domain in global competition, saying whoever controls big data technologies, to Josh's point, will control the resources for development and have the upper hand. And why that matters, again, to the laws you're talking about is because China has a 2020 biosecurity law that grants Beijing absolute authority over all biological samples stored by or accessible to Chinese entities, regardless of where the data physically resides. So even if it's an American company, but it has like a joint venture with a Chinese one, under this law, Beijing, if it wants, can be like, great, let me check on that. And you also have the China's national intelligence law and cybersecurity laws, which also require Chinese biotech entities to support state intelligence efforts when they're called upon. And so again, why it's like you have another huge company called Beijing Genomics Institute, which is now under BGI Group. A couple years ago, it was added onto the U.S. Defense Department's list of Chinese military-affiliated companies, which raises the concerns that Josh was talking about. When you have that civil
BGI
military
Genomics, one of the
fusion.
big ones, talking about the super soldier program, they're calling it, which is creating more perfect humans. To,
They did the COVID test too. Right?
Yeah, they were. They did the COVID test. BGI Genomics is tied to the Chinese military, which is some of the big concerns being raised.
If you want to watch that entire segment, you can check it out on the Primetime YouTube channel. It'll be linked down in the description box below. And also, if you would like to dig through any of my research notes from today's episode regarding these CCP DNA weapons, I will throw those into the description box as well. And all I ask in return is that as you're making your way down there to that description box, please take a super short detour to smash those like and subscribe buttons so that the YouTube algorithm will pick up this episode and share it with ever more people. Thank you so much for that. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epic Times. Stay informed. Most importantly, stay free.
All right, well, that ends this part of the show. I might be on here in a few more minutes with a little bit more story time or to answer questions. But like I said, if I'm scared of this, you should be absolutely out of your freaking mind. I have a pretty good idea of how in-depth this can be and has gone. And basically, what we have is a bunch of, quote, China immigrants as well that happen to be military age personnel, meaning that if they're military age in China, just like in Russia, after they get out of high school, it's mandate that they have to go into the military. It's a mandate. If they're military age in China, they're an invasion force, people, and they're already here. That's been Beware Mouse. Thank you for tuning in. May your God be with you.